Dr. Eric Kwan, President of the Management Development Institute of Singapore, Dr. Thavindran, Secretary General, Dr. Robert Hendry, President of the Oklahoma City University, Dr. Jan Rawls Henry, faculty members, distinguished guests, graduates, parents, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to join you on this very important occasion for our graduates and your families. Let me thank Dr. Leo, first of all, for his very kind introduction. It's always a little bit strange to hear someone talk about you in those terms, because most of us just think of ourselves as being part of a community, part of our families, and being part of a group of people who are trying to make a contribution. It goes without saying that all our graduates today have worked hard to achieve this very important milestone in their lives. I know from MDIS that in fact many of you have had to complete your studies whilst working at the same time. It is not easy, but you have done it. Congratulations. I think you deserve a round of applause too. One of the questions I get asked very often from young people is, what will enable me to be successful? What will help me to get on in the journey of life and achieve fulfillment? I'm not a sage, I'm not a philosopher. I don't have a tome, a book that I've written that I could share with you. But I do have a couple of personal observations that I hope will be helpful to you, and I would encourage you to just please use what is useful, and if it doesn't resonate with you, there is no harm in putting it aside. But if it does mean something to you, I hope it helps you somewhat along your way. The first personal observation I want to share is something that I actually read that came from a corporate captain, someone who had risen to the top of the business sector. And I was very surprised to hear him say this. He said that you should always take your work seriously, but not yourself too seriously. So let me say that again. You should always take your work seriously, but not yourself too seriously. I was very curious what he meant when he said that. And it got me thinking. And I think after many years of reflection, I suspect that what he means is that you can't think of life as all about yourself. It's really not about you, but your ability to contribute to the team. It's about your ability to bring value to any organization that you belong to, whether it's your company, whether it's your social group, whether it's a voluntary welfare organization that you have chosen to be part of. It's not about you, it's your ability to contribute, it's your ability to bring value to the organization. And why this is true is because organizations very often find it very hard to accommodate individuals who have a lot of demands, but who are not terribly mindful about the contributions they can bring to the table. So, for example, there are often individuals who are calculating about their assignments, or, for example, calculating about covering for their colleagues who have a need to be away for a period of time. Or there are also individuals in organizations who are what is usually referred to as nato, N-A-T-O, no action, talk only. A lot of suggestions, a lot of ideas, but when the organization says, hey, who's willing to do something about it? Suddenly silence. Nothing else to contribute. Now, I should be very clear to say that it is actually right of you to have some expectations of being well taken care of in any organization. This is not to say that you should have no expectations at all. However, I think it is also important to remember that you have the best chance of being valued if you put yourself in the shoes of the future boss that you would like to be and think about what kind of staff, what kind of a team member your boss would want today from you. If you're able to do that, put yourself in the shoes of your boss, put yourself in the shoes of your employers, and be the kind of person that they would like to see from you, then I think you have the best chance of being valued, and I think you have the best chance of one day being in that position. This is, of course, again, I think, important to add that, of course, employers also have a responsibility, organizations also have a responsibility to have responsive and good human resource practices. This does not take that responsibility away from them, but it is to say that as individuals, we have the ability to influence the outcome, we have the ability to influence our own journey by taking action into our own hands. So in other words, what I'm saying is that instead of looking for an employer of choice, I think it's also very useful for us to seek to be the employee of choice, to be the co-worker of choice, to be the team member of choice. And when you are able to do that, you can be sure many employers will want to be your employer of choice. And to do that, I think this is where the advice that I saw from this corporate captain is useful. To do that, we have to avoid over-focusing on ourselves. And we have to learn to shift our focus to our work, our competence, our team, our customers, and the people who are really in the strongest position to define success for us. I have no doubt that many of you, with the competence, with the perseverance that you've been able to demonstrate in the course of achieving your very important milestone, will be able to find success in your own way. So that's the first observation. The second observation that I wanted to share with you also did not come from me personally, but something that I read that has been a very useful reminder for me. It says, or it reminds us, not to climb up the ladder, not to climb up the ladder only to find that it is leaning against the wrong wall. Don't climb a ladder only to find that it is leaning against the wrong wall. So, what does it mean by that? Well, as you progress in your careers, you will find actually that many colleagues, many friends, many people that you know, after several years will switch roles or they move into other fields. I think this suggests that they are searching and they are still not able to find the right answer to the question, what do I want to do? So they are searching, so they move. But some keep moving, and they don't seem to be able to settle down. My suggestion to you is that to get the right answer, you must first figure out the right question. To get the right answer for yourself, you need to figure out what's the right question for yourself. And here are some possible questions you could ask yourself. For example, is the question for you, how can I make a lot of money? Or is the question for you, how can I get a car and a condo? Or is the question for you, what can I do that makes the best use of my time and my talents and my gifts? And each one of us has something that is different from someone else, as Dr. Dinnan has talked about earlier. Another possible question, what makes my life full and complete? That question is a very important one, and if you choose to answer that question, you will find that the answer lies within you alone and not with anyone else. And that is why it's so important to figure out the right question for yourself. That is not to say that other questions are not useful at some point in time. For example, there's nothing wrong with asking how you can make more money. It's not absolutely wrong to do that at all. However, if you make that your only question, then you must accept that at the end of your life, you've only managed to answer that question, sometimes satisfactorily, sometimes not so satisfactorily. So you have to ask the right questions for yourself. When asking questions, it's the important thing to ask, what is the right question when I'm 60, when I'm 70, when I'm 80, not just when I'm 30, when I'm 40. Because if luck is in your favor, we are all going to be around a very long time. For me, a suggestion to you is that one important question that ought to be answered is, how important is family to me? And here I want to make a same pitch as Dr. T, Dr. Dinan. And that is the question of, is having a car and a condo meaningful at age 60 without children? And I think only you can answer that question for yourself. And I hoped to say this without sounding like your parents or the government nagging at you. I'm only asking you to decide for yourself what a successful life looks like to you, and then to work backwards to make choices that will help you to get there. You have to look back, we have to work backwards, because the life that you define as being successful doesn't materialize by itself. It materializes by itself only by some magic, but in reality, you have to make those choices to make that vision a reality. So, if family features as important in your definition of success, you have to find a way to make it happen. And that means seeking out the potential for partnership for life. That means making the effort not only to plan the wedding, but actually to make the marriage work. And those of us who are married know that it's hard work making marriage work and requires a lot of effort, doesn't just happen by itself. So, if I may put it in a different way, you need to know the destination before you can plan your journey. And so, do climb the ladder, but make sure it is leaning against the right wall. The third observation that I would like to share is that I, an individual, can be more successful if my country, my society, and my community are also successful. I can be more successful if my country, my society, and my community are also successful. Now, why do I say that? In the course of my studies, in the course of my work, I've been very fortunate to have visited many different countries. And invariably, when we go to these countries, when they are being introduced to me and they say, oh, you're from Singapore, we don't sometimes realize how the fact that we're Singaporeans carries such a high brand equity. Because when we say we are Singaporean, a lot of positive qualities are associated with it. It's a little bit like saying that you have an Apple iPhone as opposed to some other, well, I better not say any others. It's the brand equity that comes from being Singaporean. And if, for example, you were to seek out a career opportunity in a company in a different country, and they take a look at the fact, at your CV, and they firstly see that you're from Singapore. Of course, when they see that you're a Management Development Institute of Singapore, that makes a big difference too. So there is something that's very valuable in the fact that we carry this little red passport. But when I met that person, I haven't done anything to earn his high regard at all, except for carrying a red passport, except for saying that I'm Singaporean. But if he is to hold the next Singaporean that he meets in high regard, I have to live up to that name. I have to do my part and let him see the quality coming through. I have to do my part and make him affirmed in his belief that Singaporeans are special in some way. And I think that's also what Dr. Didin is asking you to do, because you are now representatives, you're ambassadors for MDIS. When you do good work, when you live up to the good name of the institution, you add to the strength, you add to the credibility of the organization, and you in turn help the people who are associated with the institute go further, which will help yourself. So you can be more successful if MDIS is more successful. You can be more successful if Singapore is more successful. It goes together. But why I say that this is so valuable is because I have met many very bright people in other countries. Some of them, I know for a fact, are better than I am, smarter, more hardworking, more enterprising, more creative. But they are stuck in a certain position because their community is stuck, sometimes because their country is stuck. So it is, as a result, harder for their families to get them the kind of education available to me as a Singaporean, ordinary Singaporean, with no particular family backing, no particular family network. It is harder for them to get the kind of jobs available to me when I finished school. It is harder for them to get opportunity for more training, for more advancement, and to be recognized for their contributions. It is in turn harder for them to build up their own families. So when we think of all this, what it's telling us is that we can do our part to ensure the success of our community, because it will in turn help ourselves. In that regard, it is also useful to remember that Singapore is not perfect. But we have a lot going for us, and we can each do our part to build it up further. Therefore, I remind myself that I do have a stake in Singapore's success, just as you do. Therefore, it is important that each one of us participates in building Singapore's future, make our own contribution. It starts by having honest and a constructive appraisal of what we're good at, what we're not so good at, about the things that are happy in Singapore and the things that are not so happy in Singapore. An honest and constructive appraisal of what we are and where we are. Remember also that in this conversation, it is important to find the right balance. It is always easier to point out the problems, but harder to help work out the solutions. But each one of us has to make that choice. Do we choose to be part of the problem, or do we choose to be part of the solution? My encouragement to you is that you are now important members of the community. You have the training, you have the competence, and you are well equipped to participate, to make your contribution, and I invite you to also participate in the Singapore conversation that we are undertaking to help shape the future of this country. I hope you will bring forward your ideas, bring forward your suggestions, and bring forward your hopes, and help to make the future of Singapore a better one for yourselves and for our next generation than what we have found for ourselves. So, the three observations that I've shared with you: first, always take your work seriously, but not yourself too seriously. Second, make sure that when you climb the ladder, it's leaning against the right wall. And third, remember that you have a stake in the success of your country, your community, your society. And I hope that these 3 observations are helpful to you as you make your way in the world. I have no doubt that many of you will be successful in your own ways, and you will lead fulfilling lives. I wish you and your family the very best, and I congratulate you once again. I also want to assure you, before I forget, that the Singapore of tomorrow will have a lot of trees, including coconut trees, as well as super trees at the Gardens by the Bay. Thank you very much, and all the best to you.